What if I told you that the most profound psychological breakthrough of the 20th century came not from a university laboratory, but from the gas chambers of Auschwitz? That a man who lost everything, his family, his life's work, his freedom, even his name, discovered something so powerful that it has saved millions of lives and could transform yours today? Viktor Frankl survived 3 Nazi concentration camps, including Auschwitz, and emerged with insights that revolutionized how we understand human resilience. But here's what's shocking. His discovery in humanity's darkest hour isn't just for extreme situations. The missing piece explains why some people thrive under pressure, while others crumble at the first sign of difficulty. I will show you Frankl's 3 core insights from the camps and how to apply them to any challenge you're facing. Frankl's journey. In 1942, Viktor Frankl was a successful psychiatrist in Vienna with a thriving practice, a new wife, and a manuscript ready for publication. He had developed innovative therapeutic techniques and was building a reputation as one of Europe's most promising young psychologists. Then the Nazis came. Within months, Frankl lost everything. His practice was shut down, his manuscript was confiscated and destroyed, his pregnant wife was deported, and he was stripped of his identity, literally reduced to a number, 1104. He spent the next 3 years in 4 different concentration camps, including the notorious Auschwitz and Dachau. But what makes Frankl's story extraordinary is that instead of being destroyed by this experience, he used it as the ultimate laboratory for understanding human psychology. While surrounded by unimaginable suffering and death, he began observing something remarkable about who survived and who didn't. It wasn't the physically strongest who made it through. It wasn't the most intelligent or the most resourceful. The survivors shared something else entirely, something that Frankl would later call the will to meaning. They had found a reason to live that transcended their circumstances. Frankl noticed that prisoners who had something to live for, a person they loved, a mission to complete, a future they could envision, were more likely to survive the camp's horrors. Those who lost their sense of purpose often died within weeks, even if they were physically healthy. This observation became the foundation of what Frankl would later develop into logotherapy, a form of psychotherapy based on the premise that the primary human drive isn't pleasure, as Freud believed, or power, as Adler suggested, but meaning. When Frankl was finally liberated in 1945, he learned that his wife, parents, and brother had all perished in the camps. He was alone in the world, with nothing but the clothes on his back and the insights he had gained from humanity's darkest chapter. But those insights would go on to help millions of people find hope in their own seemingly hopeless situations. The 3 core insights from the camps. Insight 1: the last human freedom. In the concentration camps, the Nazis controlled everything. They decided when prisoners ate, slept, worked, and died. They stripped away names, possessions, dignity, and hope. But Frankl discovered that there was one thing they couldn't control: how he chose to respond to what was happening to him. The one thing you can't take away from me is the way I choose to respond to what you do to me. The last of one's freedoms is to choose one's attitude in any given circumstance. This wasn't just philosophical speculation, but a matter of life and death. Frankl observed that prisoners who maintained their inner freedom and chose their attitude despite their circumstances were more likely to survive. They found ways to maintain dignity, compassion, and even humor in the face of unthinkable cruelty. One of Frankl's most powerful examples involves a dying fellow prisoner. This man asked Frankl what the point of suffering was if he was going to die anyway. Frankl helped him realize that his suffering had meaning because his wife, who had died earlier, was spared from witnessing his pain. The man died peacefully, having found meaning even in his final moments. This insight reveals something profound about human psychology. We can't always control what happens to us, but we can always control how we interpret and respond to what happens to us. This choice, this last human freedom, is available to you right now, regardless of your circumstances. Modern application, the response choice. Every day, you face situations that trigger automatic emotional responses. Your boss criticizes your work, your partner says something hurtful, you receive bad news, and you face a setback. In these moments, you have what Frankl called the space between stimulus and response. Most people react automatically. They let their circumstances determine their emotional state. But Frankl's insight shows us that we can pause in that space and choose our response. We can ask, how do I want to respond to this? What response aligns with my values and serves my long-term well-being? This doesn't mean suppressing emotions or pretending everything is fine. It means recognizing that you can choose how you interpret and respond to challenging situations. You can see a job loss as evidence that you're a failure or an opportunity to find work that aligns better with your values. You can see a relationship ending as proof that you're unlovable, or as a chance to grow and find a more compatible partner. Insight 2. The will to meaning. Frankl's second central insight was that humans are primarily motivated by the search for meaning, not the pursuit of pleasure or power. In the camps, he observed that prisoners who had a compelling reason to live, a mission to complete, a person to reunite with, a story to tell, were more resilient than those who had lost their sense of purpose. Those who have a why to live can bear with almost any how. Frankl survived partly because he felt compelled to rewrite his destroyed manuscript and share his insights. Even in the camps, he would mentally compose chapters, imagining himself lecturing to audiences about his learning. This future vision gave him a reason to endure the present suffering. But here's what's crucial. Meaning isn't something you find lying around waiting to be discovered. It's something you create through your choices and actions. Meaning emerges when you commit to something larger than yourself. Whether that's a person you love, a cause you believe in, or a contribution you want to make to the world. Frankl identified 3 sources of meaning. Creative values, what you give to the world through your work, art, or contributions. Experiential values, what you take from the world through relationships, beauty, truth, and love. Attitudinal values, the stance you take toward unavoidable suffering. The third category is most important because it means that even in the worst circumstances, you can create meaning through your attitude. Modern application, the meaning audit. Most people today don't face life-threatening situations. Still, they face what Frankl called the existential vacuum, a sense of meaninglessness that leads to anxiety, depression, and what he termed Sunday neurosis. The feeling of emptiness that emerges when you're not distracted by work or activities. To apply Frankl's insight, regularly ask yourself, what am I contributing to the world that reflects my unique gifts and values? What am I receiving from life through my relationships and experiences? How am I choosing to respond to the difficulties and challenges I face? If you're struggling to find meaning in your current situation, look for ways to serve something larger than yourself. This might mean volunteering for a cause you care about, mentoring someone who could benefit from your experience, or simply approaching your current responsibilities with a sense of service to others. Insight 3. Tragic optimism. Frankl's third insight was perhaps the most paradoxical. The ability to maintain hope and find meaning even in the face of unavoidable suffering. He called this tragic optimism. The capacity to remain optimistic despite inevitable tragedies. This isn't naive positivity or denial of suffering. It's the recognition that suffering, while painful, can be transformed into something meaningful. In the camps, Frankl saw people who used their suffering as an opportunity to demonstrate courage, compassion, and dignity. Their suffering became a testament to the human spirit's capacity for transcendence. If there is meaning in life at all, then there must be meaning in suffering. Frankl distinguished between suffering that serves a purpose and suffering that doesn't. Unavoidable suffering, the death of a loved one, a serious illness, or a natural disaster, can be given meaning through the attitude we take toward it. But unnecessary suffering, staying in an abusive relationship, refusing to seek help for a treatable condition, wallowing in self-pity, serves no purpose and should be eliminated when possible. The key is learning to distinguish between what can be changed and what must be accepted, then finding meaning in both your actions and your acceptance. Modern application. The suffering transformation. When you face unavoidable suffering, ask yourself, how can this experience make me more compassionate toward others who face similar challenges? What strengths is this situation forcing me to develop? How can I use this experience to help others in the future? What does my response to this challenge say about my character and values? This doesn't mean seeking out suffering or romanticizing pain. It means recognizing that when suffering is unavoidable, you can let it destroy or transform you. The choice is always yours. The Logotherapy framework. Based on his insights from the camps, Frankl developed Logotherapy, a therapeutic approach focused on helping people find meaning in their lives. Unlike other forms of therapy that focus primarily on past traumas or unconscious drives, Logotherapy is future-oriented and focuses on what Frankl called the will to meaning. The 3 pillars of Logotherapy. Pillar 1, freedom of will. You always have the freedom to choose your attitude toward any situation. This freedom exists even in the most constrained circumstances. In the camps, prisoners could decide to share their last piece of bread or hoard it, to maintain their dignity or abandon it, to help a fellow prisoner or to ignore their suffering. This freedom isn't unlimited. You can't choose your circumstances, genetics, or past. But you can always choose your response to these factors. This choice makes you human and gives you the power to transcend your circumstances. Pillar 2, will to meaning. Your primary motivation is the search for meaning, not the avoidance of pain or the pursuit of pleasure. You can endure almost any hardship when you have a compelling reason to live. When you lack meaning, even minor difficulties can feel overwhelming. Meaning isn't something you find through introspection or self-analysis. You discover it through engagement with the world, through relationships, work, creativity, and service to others. Pillar 3, meaning of life. Life has meaning under all circumstances, even the most miserable ones. This meaning isn't abstract or philosophical. It's concrete and personal. It's found in the specific tasks and relationships that life presents to you. You don't ask what the meaning of life is. Life asks you what you're going to make meaningful. Every situation allows you to create meaning through your choices and actions. Practical logotherapy techniques. The deathbed test. When facing a difficult decision, imagine yourself on your deathbed, looking back at your life. What choice would you want to have made? What would you regret not doing? This perspective helps clarify what's truly meaningful to you. The legacy question. Ask yourself, what do I want to be remembered for? What impact do I want to have on the world? This question helps you identify meaningful goals and priorities. The service shift. When you're feeling depressed or anxious, shift your focus from your problems to how you can serve others. Frankl found that people who focused on contributing to something larger than themselves experienced less psychological distress. The meaning moment. Throughout your day, pause and ask, how can I create meaning in this moment? This might mean bringing full attention to a conversation, approaching a mundane task excellently, or finding a way to help someone. Modern applications and case studies. Let me show you how Frankl's insights apply to common modern challenges. Case Study 1. Career Crisis. David was a successful lawyer who felt empty despite his professional achievements. He was making good money, but felt like his work had no meaning. Using Frankl's framework. Freedom of will. David recognized that he could choose his attitude toward his current situation while planning his transition. Will to meaning. He identified that his core values were justice and helping people who couldn't help themselves. Meaning creation. He gradually transitioned to pro bono work and eventually started a nonprofit legal clinic. Result: David found deep satisfaction in his work and reported feeling more fulfilled. Case Study 2. Health Crisis. Sarah was diagnosed with a chronic illness that ended her athletic career and left her feeling like her life was over. Applying Frankl's insights. Tragic optimism. She saw her illness as an opportunity to develop new aspects of herself and help others facing similar challenges. Meaning, through suffering, she used her experience to become an advocate for people with chronic illnesses and started a support group. Service shift. She found new purpose and meaning by focusing on helping others navigate their health challenges. Result: Sarah became a respected advocate and coach, helping hundreds of people find meaning despite their health limitations. Case Study 3. Relationship loss. Mark felt his life had no purpose after his wife of 20 years left him, using logotherapy principles. Last human freedom. He chose to respond to the divorce as an opportunity for growth rather than evidence of his failure. Meaning reconstruction. He identified new sources of meaning, being the best father possible and using his experience to help other men navigate divorce. Future focus. Instead of dwelling on the past, he focused on the person he wanted to become and the contribution he wanted to make. Result: Mark developed a stronger relationship with his children and became a divorce coach, helping other men find meaning during their transitions. Your meaning-making challenge. Here's how to apply Frankl's insights to your own life. Week 1. Freedom recognition. Practice recognizing your freedom to choose your response in difficult situations. When something triggers you, pause and ask, how do I choose to respond to this? Week 2. Meaning audit. Evaluate your current life using Frankl's 3 sources of meaning. What are you contributing to the world? What are you receiving through relationships and experiences? How are you responding to your challenges? Week 3. Service shift. Identify one way you can serve something larger than yourself. This might be volunteering, mentoring, or simply approaching your current responsibilities with a spirit of service. Week 4. Tragic optimism practice. If you're facing suffering, ask how to transform it into something meaningful. How can this experience make you stronger, more compassionate, or better able to help others? Remember Frankl's profound insight. Everything can be taken from you except your freedom to choose your attitude and create meaning from your circumstances. You may not be facing the extreme conditions of a concentration camp, but the same principles apply to whatever challenges you're facing. The question isn't whether you'll face difficult times. You will. The question is whether you'll use Frankl's framework to transform those difficulties into sources of meaning, growth, and service to others. If this video helped you understand how to find hope in difficult situations, hit that like button and subscribe for more insights that bridge ancient wisdom with modern psychology. Next week, we're exploring how Epictetus developed unshakable emotional resilience through his approach to anger management, insights that could revolutionize how you handle difficult people. Comment below and tell me, what's one area of your life where you're ready to apply Frankl's meaning-making approach? I read every comment and often feature the most insightful responses in future videos. Remember, everything can be taken from you except your freedom to choose your attitude and create meaning from your circumstances. That freedom is yours right now. How will you use it?